First guest on the Student Teacher podcast is Ben, and I didn't actually even get your last name, Ben.
Ben Crayler, crayfish, without the fish.
Crayler. Yep, Ben
Yeah.
Crayler, special education teacher who also sits on the school board at a school in the Gold Coast. Ben rose through the teacher ranks in the Catholic education system.
No, independent
Christian education school system.
Yeah.
You sort of went through with quite high determination and reached school principal by the age of 36.
Yep.
Nowadays I often see you out surfing at Kira Point looking pretty relaxed and content. But you've come a long way through that journey to kind of get to this point you're at now.
Yep.
With a lot of different challenges and realizations and maybe some strategies along the way.
Yeah.
Yep. And I guess you were just starting to talk before we started recording about how you moved into the school board situation that you're kind of in now.
Yep.
And I was interested to hear how you found going from being, I guess, biggest difference between teaching and then being in that sort of decision-making school situation.
Yep.
Where you sort of found those differences.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks, Jimmy. Good to be here, mate.
Welcome as well.
It's been good to meet you out there and have a couple of beers and talk about life. And I think the journey for me has been one of more self-awareness and learn. I think as a teacher, you've got to be one of the key ingredients of if I do say so myself, of being a good teacher is that you're a good learner. And that you're open and willing and can admit when you've got way more to learn than you already know. So I think that's been a big part of my journey, and I love gleaming off people. I love talking and listening to all sorts of people with all their different backgrounds or special education backgrounds that they have. So I started off as a primary school teacher and did that for about 7 years. And then I did start getting more responsibility in administration and welfare. So
is that something that you really pushed for, or did you kind of just did it sort of just align itself for you?
Yeah, I reckon it's funny, the thing I like about teaching is that it's not just male dominated. But when you're a male in teaching, I was always especially in the Christian network, it was like, you'll be a principal one day, Ben. You're a good male teacher. You'll make a good principal.
Okay, so it's sort of like put on you.
So very early. Like I think even my very first week of teaching at my first school, there was people already talking about, you should be a principal one day.
Wow.
Which is a bit soon.
Yeah, how old were you then?
I was 23.
No way.
Yeah, so that's...
It's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, I actually value the involvement of, all the women in leadership in education too. Yeah. And I guess as a primary school teacher, I've really appreciated working with more women than men.
Yep. What's it like? Almost 80%.
Yeah,
women
probably
in the primary school.
Sometimes more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at my kids' current school, their primary school, there's one male in the whole primary school. Where when I was leading that primary school, half of the staff were males.
Okay.
So you can be strategic and do that.
Yep.
But so it's an interesting place. And I don't necessarily agree with just saying, you're a male, good male teacher, you should be a principal. I think if you're a good teacher, maybe you should stay being a good teacher. Or if you're if you've got potential, then put them in there. So anyway,
because everyone has their strengths, weaknesses, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. But so that was... So then I didn't do much. Like I was always very... looking for things to do in the school that would improve the outcomes for the students or the school in general.
Yep.
So
I took a bit of a proactive...
Yeah, I was very proactive.
Yep.
When the first school I was in didn't have any netball courts or soccer fields, then my mate, him and I were out there with line markers setting it up and setting up teams and So, that was sport related. So
Yep.
when there wasn't a music program, so I was doing guitar lessons at lunchtime.
Yeah, cool.
If the kids hadn't been on camp yet, then we made sure that we were doing a camp with year 3 kids up
Yep.
in Toowoomba.
Cool.
Actually, so with Shay and her mum, actually.
Oh,
I
yeah,
remember
nice.
that.
That's cool.
Meeting her mum there. So,
Yep.
so always, very active.
Okay, yeah, being involved. And,
Yep. And that came from a desire to help.
Was that the motivation?
That was the main motivation,
Yep.
but I also know that I liked pleasing people
Sure.
too. So I think there was both of that at play.
Kind of like helped each other.
Yeah.
Those two
Yep.
things.
So I was driven to perform.
Yep.
But also to create culture and community.
Okay, cool.
So I think really powerful. Yeah.
That's good. Did you find that, like, you had those drives and then that sort of helped you find your way into the leadership roles? Did you were you like, oh, I'll do these because it will help me get to those places, or you just sort of did what you did?
Yeah, so I didn't do it to be a leader.
No.
I did it because I was a leader.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to think.
Yep.
I wasn't trying to get that job.
Yep.
But I also wasn't afraid to take on that responsibility if it led to that down the path. So even when I was like 17 at a seafood shop with 40 staff members, by 19 I was managing most of those people. So I guess if you've got a personality and a motivation that is one of accepting responsibility and doing what needs to be done, and manage. And I guess if you're good at managing and interacting with people, which I think I am,
found
then
the strength there.
it was then I was always asked to do that sort of role. So I was a leader in my fish and chip shop for 5 years out of the 8 years that I was there. So from 19 to 24,
no way,
I was a manager. And so then I went into the school and so anyway,
just kind of led on from
exactly,
there, kind of
it
kept
did.
going.
So anyway, that was that first season.
Okay, cool. Is there anything that you sort of feel like you maybe missed by like moving quite like in that direction or in your teaching, or you sort of is there some things you like, you said you were trying to please and also looking for the best interest of the students at the same time, that kind of helped like propel you forward? Do you feel like taking that attitude like helped? Like, what parts did you miss? What parts didn't help, if that makes sense?
I think doing that and being that so what happens is when you're in a smaller school and you're co-leading with a principal, you're also a gap filler.
A gap filler?
Yeah.
What do you mean by a gap filler?
So what would happen is I would be allocated maybe 1 or 2 days a week to run the primary school.
Yep.
And then I would teach PE, music, a bit of English, and give teachers then a bit of time off to do planning or programming or whatever they wanted to do. So I guess what I missed as that happened is having my own class and developing
got a little motorbike action going on.
Once that happened, I missed my own specific class.
Yeah, okay.
But then I got the whole school.
Yeah.
Because I was teaching all of them, but it's still not the same thing. It's a nice thing to be a primary teacher and have the same kids for a whole year and get to know their parents as well.
Yep.
And also then if you're lucky and you get to teach, say, grade 3 for 5 years, then you can go quite deep in how you present the curriculum.
Get
and
really practiced at it.
Exactly. Get really practiced at it, change things up a bit.
Yep.
Or even just get used to the topics that you're teaching every year or every 2 years.
Yep. So then you get to do those tests of like, oh, this worked well last year, this didn't work well, like, oh, maybe I'll try this time.
Yep, that's right.
Keep progressing more specifically.
And you're always learning. Like I was never happy with my ability to teach reading out of uni.
Yep.
I don't believe that my university gave me the necessary skills to teach literacy.
Okay.
So the ability to read, write, spell, to vocab, how to actually...
Didn't get those practical skills.
Yeah, how to teach that and I guess how to set up your class your program so that it helps the 60% of kids that get it straight away, the 30% that are going to need some special sort of group work, tier 2 type attention, and then there's those, you can have up to 10% of your class that really need critical intervention. Yep. So I was lucky then. So in doing my leadership job as a primary teacher, I was lucky to get, the school got like a scholarship of about $600,000, where I was able to do all the training and train all my staff and set up really good literacy and numeracy programs.
That's good.
Based on research, informed practice and collecting data. So really explicit type of instructional approach to literacy. Anyway, like that's a side note, but that was a good thing.
No, but that's good because you saw the lack of your own understanding and your own skill set, and you had the opportunity to bring that in for the rest of everyone as well.
Yeah, that's right, and become a I guess a professional at it in a sense of actually leading a community, not just being the teacher in the classroom. So anyway, that was a good thing. But going back to your question, I guess what I missed was my own class.
Yep.
And that interaction that you get with students that way.
Sure.
Probably also when you're not a leader, you tend to be on the same level of all the staff members, so you have a good relationship that's on the same level.
Yep.
And so I missed that kind of authentic interaction that I had with staff when I wasn't their boss.
Pre-power. Yeah.
Yeah, pre-power. Go to the pub and have a beer and talk about your week.
Yep.
As a fellow colleague.
Yep.
Instead of being the head of the junior school at the pub having a beer or wherever having a coffee.
Yep. Because that's a big thing, isn't it? That's having that collegial support and that feeling of a team in a school, like that seems to be a big thing for, I guess, keeping yourself able to function well, able to like handle the challenges, able to check with the reality of the situation with others. And if you don't have as much that could be a challenging place to be.
Yeah, and that makes me think of my first 5 years of teaching. I remember every afternoon getting to 3:00 and looking for an adult to talk to. Because I interacted with 8-year-olds all day.
Yeah.
Or even out on lunch break, and you're tying up and interacting with 5-year-olds, which I love.
So
but it's a different energy and a different level of maturity that you're dealing with there. So as adults, we long for adult relationship.
Of course.
So that was...
Get to use our big words.
What's that?
Get to use our big words.
Get to use our big words, exactly. So I remember thinking that. But then when you're in that leadership role, I did miss that same level collegial interaction that you could have, where it did change the dynamics then.
Yep.
So that made it I think, and depending on your leadership team and their motivations, it can be pretty lonely once you get into that place of leadership.
Especially if you moved up there quickly too, I imagine.
Yeah, that's right, because there is a certain skill level that needs to be developed in the dynamics of operating a school.
Yeah.
Especially when you're working through grants that you get from the government for millions of dollars for building programs. So you're not only... You've gone from writing a curriculum related to Year 3 science or English or maths or PE to managing a budget of $5 million and putting in an application to the government to get a $2 million or $1 million grant to build a $3 million building. Or trying to get
completely different skill sets, isn't it?
Exactly.
And then managing the stakeholders of who gets to use that space and what their needs are. You're really dealing with a lot of different types of minds and priorities and all that sort of stuff.
Heaps. So like sitting with builders and architects, or then so you go from a building and architect meeting to a parent who's come in to whinge because they're feeling like the teacher treated their child inappropriately, or they want justice for a comment that was made, or because another kid did something to their kid. So you go from a meeting about a building program to being yelled at by a parent or death threats at that. Then you go to a meeting with a staff member who's not performing properly and you have to call them out.
Yep.
So you go from that to that to that to then having a cup of tea with three little year 8, whatever, three little year 3 kids and
so
seeing
many
how
hats.
they go on that day. That's right. So it was, and then I might sometimes take my guitar and go and sing to the kindy kids. So it's really lots of transitions going on.
You're changing pace throughout the whole day. You've got to be pretty quick on your feet.
Yep.
Is that something that you found that came naturally to you, or did you consciously try and train for that, or like were you aware really of, as you're going through those processes of going into the schools, how much attention you paid to those differences, or did it just kind of come naturally? Or
what I was aware of, or what I wanted to keep coming naturally, is my ability to relate and communicate well with people and make them as a teacher. I remember one of my goals right from the beginning was making kids feel accepted, included, welcomed, accountable. Like those values.
Values. They're your personal kind of values.
That's right. And how we respect and be responsible with each other. So I remember, that's how I liked running my classroom, which meant I had high expectations of myself, because I should make sure I am doing that, leading that if I'm expecting that. So I did intentionally want to carry that on in leadership. But yes, there was definitely growth and stretching there when I was having to oversee curriculum. So I took it very seriously that I was the head, not only the principal of the school, but the head of the curriculum too. Even though schools employ people that are really gifted in curriculum development and crossing T's and dotting I's, from my experience and my own reading on it, I wanted to make sure that I had my head across the curriculum of the whole school, that it was what should be being taught, that it was, so I would then draw on specialists to come into the school who were consultants related to different subject areas or managing kids with disability or special needs. And so making sure that I sort of cast my net fairly wide to ensure that what was happening in my school was best practiced at that time.
For that community. And
exactly, philosophically as well as in practice. So, gee, I know I'm all over the place here, mate.
No, you're going good. No, we're going along.
Going all right. I think I'm onto another thing, but
that's all right. Because I guess that's where I wanted to understand is what were the key things you're holding in your mind in different times. And so I guess you're talking about how you have to wear different hats a lot of the time, and then you have to then have the different considerations of that community, and so there's a lot going on in your day quite consistently. And it's like a leadership thing, kind of. This is where I'm just trying to understand. It's like you're bringing in all of those considerations and choosing the direction with the curriculum, which way to go, and getting the best advice you can along the way, and going, all right, this is where we're going. That sounds like a lot to manage and handle, and I'm sure you had a bit of a team around you to support you in that way.
I had a team. So it's interesting in thinking about what you're saying. In that principal role, I didn't want to be a micromanager, but at the same time I wanted to make sure that people weren't going off on their own agenda.
You're still under the same banner,
because the buck stops with you. I think the challenge of a school community is there's so many layers and levels of how it needs to operate, and you still need one person to steer that ship. I think so. And that one person then needs to have a good skill of distributing their leadership and what needs to be done, but at the same time having their eyes over what it is, but maybe not their hands in all the pie.
Sure.
So
you still get like some feedback along the way of all the different parts and how they're working, and then being able to like spot when some of those legs or limbs or sections or whatever aren't going as well as hopefully compared to the plan that you've sort of got.
Because you're the head and the heart, and that's got to align. If you've got someone,
it's a complex system.
Yeah, it's a complex system because that's it. You're managing a budget in an independent school. You're managing fee-paying parents. You've got to make sure that the business manager and the bursar or whoever you've got in that role is collecting the money, maintaining a positive relationship with the parents, doing the government funding properly, maintaining the right data, not fudging the data, because you get in lots of trouble for that. So you've got to be financially healthy and positive with your families because they're helping pay the bills. So that's one part. Then you're managing, maybe your leadership team is a head of primary school, a head of senior school, a head of middle school, head of the preschool or something. So then you've got this other team of people that relates to curriculum and welfare and education and relating to children and parents and staff, teachers and non-teaching staff. So you're also wanting to make sure that, and you've got to be able to trust those people that they're looking out for the best interests of the school, and you're the one that represents the school because the buck stops with you.
Sure.
And that's not even considering risk and safety that comes into play with all of that.
So there's so many aspects.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to ask you the question of how, because we talked about this in our previous conversations, is how did you manage that, like internally within your own, because the topics of different, like burnout and stress and all these kind of things happen in the teaching profession a lot, and I just wanted to understand how you built the skills to be able to handle that, and then where did they fall short perhaps, or where were those challenges, where were the things that you really did well, and then now looking back, what would you do differently, like those kind of questions.
Well, there's so many there's so many ways I could go with this. I think I mastered the art and skill of being a good teacher. I mean, I could continue to grow as a teacher, and things are changing, kids are changing, cultures change, or generational change, so there's always something new to learn, and there's new ways to deliver the curriculum and to manage kids. But I did master the skill of that, and being content with that, and being able to maintain my own health throughout that. And then I got into the leadership of primary school and sort of middle management, and did that for 7 years. And I think I look back now in my career, and that was probably my most satisfying time, is running the primary school. Getting the literacy and numeracy just turning it upside down because it wasn't working. So I created a really great school for learning and teaching and learning related to literacy and numeracy, as well as other subjects, but it all feeds. And behaviour management and everything. So I was able to look after my health and maintain myself as a head of primary school, so a principal of a primary school, but then I still had a principal managing above me.
What were some of the things you did to manage that?
I think I was still getting school teacher holidays. So I was able to switch off every 10 weeks. Switch off on my weekends.
Really important
that was important. I had 3 kids. I was married at the time. So I was able to get away and have a holiday, and I was able to go out with friends and still sort of maintain some level of mental and physical and emotional and spiritual health throughout that time.
Did you find it was mostly the holidays that did that, or how did you do that during the school term? Did you just sort of hang on, or what was the techniques you used to like get you through? I
think by going out with a friend, or going for a surf on the weekend, or chilling out with my kids, or doing some gardening at my house. it was just one school.
Yeah, yep.
So it was a school of a couple of hundred kids,
Yep.
30 staff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, that was maybe a good number for me,
manageable,
a manageable number.
yep.
So I could, and I did work really hard. I felt like a right-hand support person to the principal,
Mm-hmm.
and would listen and share. And I think I was able to obviously listen and talk to her about what I needed to do and grow.
Yep.
And I didn't travel as much then either to Sydney or to other countries. So that's something else I did start doing on the side, is going to Vanuatu
Okay.
and training untrained teachers in villages
Yep.
over there on islands and wherever on the main island. And so that I would do that a couple of times a year.
Cool. So you added that to your plate.
So I added that to my plate
Yep.
just at the end of that primary school teaching role.
Yep.
So then, so from, I think it was in 2015, my principal decided to move back to Sydney, and I was then asked to be the principal of the whole school,
Okay.
as well as an autism school that had only been running for 3 months within that school.
Yeah.
But within the campus, but a separate school.
Okay. And how old were you at this stage?
And that was at 36.
Yeah, that was
So it was at the prime of my toddler daughter and
Yep.
son being in. So I think my son would have been in year 4, and my other daughter was in year 2, and my littlest one was like 4 years old. So yeah, and you know, it's funny because that voice, like I said, there was always these voices, not always my voice, saying, "You'll be a principal.
Yep.
You'll be a good principal, Ben. You should do that."
Yep.
And even my own mother and father were like, "Yeah, no, that's
Pushing
for you
into that space,
exactly.
sort of. Yep.
Yeah, and even my ex-wife wanted that and didn't want it. Bit of both.
Yeah,
and I think that was me too.
Sure.
So I got
like
asked,
you want parts of it, but then you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what you're asking for sometimes.
Because there's a bit of an air to it.
Sure, yeah,
People
a bit of prestige.
there is. So that comes with it.
I can sense that.
Yeah, and I've always liked to think that I don't need power or gold or girls, because that's the 3 sayings. Or if you're a girl, it's maybe a guy.
Yeah,
anyway, we won't go there. But so I. Jeez, what was I even
you kind of had that role, and there was a lot of aspects going on that brought you into that, and then
that's finally, right, the kids and stuff. So and so then all of a sudden, so that's right, the power thing and that. So I was asked to do it. It's interesting because I remember the day they asked me, and they there was a bit of pressure there, because they're like, "Look, if you don't say yes, we'll get this other guy to do it. So hurry up and think about what you want to do." And I remember going, "No, I think I'll do it." And I went and had a chat to my wife. I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it."
Wow.
So I just went, "Yep, sure, I'll take it on."
Yep.
Yeah, that quickly. And I don't regret things that I've done well, there's some things I regret, but I whether I regret it or not, I appreciate what I've learnt from it and hope that I can become a little bit wiser than when I made that decision.
Yeah, yep. It's what you can really do, isn't it? You have to at least take it that way. Yep.
So I did become a principal, and that went from just a primary school to K to 12.
Yep.
Mainstream, and a year 5 to year 10 autism school.
It's a lot to manage.
Yeah, that was growing and continuing to be accredited, and the autism school went from 6 kids to 20 kids the next year to 30 kids the next year, and then by the time I'd left, it was up to 50 enrolments, and I think it's now peaked at 70. And it grew so quickly that we did a multi-million-dollar building program to build 8 classrooms for it, or 4 classrooms, but we had to find places and spaces and staff members too. So yes, becoming a principal, I threw myself into it with full-on enthusiasm and pumping adrenaline.
Yep.
And then burned out in 2.5 years.
2.5 years, yep.
And I think what really tipped me over the edge was trying to build the community of an autism school at the same time as learn how to be a principal of a mainstream school. And I would say that...
2 quite potentially really different tasks.
Yeah, that's right. Different tasks, different parents.
A lot of different types of needs. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because I like to do things properly, I didn't want to do it half-heartedly.
No.
And I wanted to get the right advice and also learn the skills myself. So yeah, it was really pretty intense. And then the other thing about juggling or managing leadership is that you don't always have your leadership team looking out for your best interests. Sometimes they're motivated to try and step above you. And so I remember not trusting some of my leaders that were meant to be running the different departments and seeing and as a young fella, when you're managing a 55 or 60-year-old man who wants your job, it's pretty challenging.
That's confusing. And
I think I've been reading a bit about patriarchy, and gee, I've got a long way to go because I am a white European male.
We're in the fishbowl.
I'm in the fishbowl, but I haven't, because of my personality and my relationship with my mother and the type of father I've had. I have empathy. I am gentle. I value deep relationship and talking through and listening to people. So I felt like sometimes in that leadership job, I was expected to be the type of male that I'm not. Sometimes some of the men that wanted my job were those type of men that thought I was a weak leader because of my emotional engagement and involvement and vulnerability that I displayed. Anyway, so that's a whole nother topic to go into.
That's like I'm trying to understand, like those, and then those kind of pressures are weirdly internal and can skew the way you potentially make decisions, and you know, maybe they do, or they at least create a lot of friction within you. If you're not living up to those things, so that adds to the stress.
It can do.
Like in a little underlying layer.
Yes. So I think I actually found it the challenge of leadership, but especially once I was a principal, was managing staff members who weren't performing, and you had to sometimes sack them. I remember having a meeting with a staff member who had only been there for less than 6 months and wasn't performing, and students were being pulled out of the school, and I had to let that person go. And I remember like not being able to separate the visual of him, it was a him, going home and telling his partner and children that they, I found that really hard. I hated it.
You couldn't black and white it.
No, I couldn't. It's
not really. I think that's a strength more than anything.
But it was hard.
It makes it hard.
But at the same time, you had to think of the school community and the vision and what was best. So you still had to make those decisions. So like so many layers to that role. So in the end, I did burn out. What
did that experience feel like? Like, how did that, like, how did it, because I guess did that understanding that you had burnt out come later, or were you in it at the time and you're like, I'm burning out,
I didn't want to admit to myself that it was burning out. So I knew that I was not okay because of some things that I'd started interacting with people the way that I had. Like I remember, so my mum got cancer too in my second year, I think, of being a principal.
It's life giving you heaps to carry.
Like that was pretty full on because it was a really awful bone cancer in her mouth. And anyway, so that was really intense. Sorry, mate, I just need to drink.
Go for it. I'll have some tea as well.
It's itching. Is it alright if I borrow your longboard, the Savo, still?
Definitely. I like how you did it on recording. So
Got that on record? Remember you said yes at the pub yesterday after those?
I did. Of course I remember.
2.5 pints. So, halfway through my principal cycle, my mum got pretty sick and had to have some really full-on operations. So that I think that was it was a bit of a tipping point because it is a traumatic event. Anyway, like if I was to elaborate, people would understand because it was a really full-on process.
I think people could empathise with, seeing a parent becoming sick and extra baggage and not baggage, extra challenge and
Just
creates.
and I guess that was the beginning of trauma. Like some of it was quite traumatic because she had like a 15-hour operation where they removed her face, her skin, and took the cancer out, removed a jaw, rebuilt her jaw with her fibula, and then had to put it all back again and rebuild her face. So it was really full on.
That's intense. Yes. That's a big procedure, and she would have been petrified and. Oh yeah, that's intense.
Yes. So anyway, that it's pretty full on to think about still. So that started happening, and yes, that was quite the edge tipper. Yeah, actually,
that started. Yeah. Then you started. I guess things became overwhelming in different ways.
Yeah, I think so because I think because I didn't like people. I was vulnerable to share it with staff and people. But at the same time, I was trying to protect myself too by still having to run the school and make all of those decisions that I've talked about that are really challenging at the best of times.
Yeah.
So anyway, that started to happen. And going back to how did the burnout thing happen? So that, I think, it's like that took away a bit of something that was that I didn't realise at the time, but and then the process of that also really challenged my marriage.
Yeah,
because I guess you start grieving.
Yep.
Even though my mum hadn't died yet, but like that, I think in any relationship, whatever job you're doing or not doing, when you've got to work with the person on helping a sick parent or a sick child or whatever, and then still maintain a relationship, it's like relationships take work.
They do.
And honesty and vulnerability.
Yep.
And so I realised that I think it was too much to be doing that, dealing with the mother thing, my mum dying, and being a principal of 2 schools.
Yeah.
Just
too much.
Too much. So what happened is the initial stages where I knew something was wrong was when I would be walking or driving around, but physically I felt like I was floating.
Oh wow!
And looking at my body from the sky.
Really?
Yeah.
You had like a disconnected kind of.
Yeah, I disassociated myself with my body.
Wow, just too much. Was there too much pain, or just didn't feel comfortable in it, or you just had to separate?
I didn't recognise the pain at the time.
Yep.
But yes, there was pain.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was out of my depth, probably running the schools.
Yep. Just kind of hanging on, kind of thing.
Hanging on.
Yeah.
So
were you able to like let people know that, or did you feel like you just had to keep going?
No, I think I did because so when I kind of realised that because the other thing that was happening is I would have interactions with people professionally, but then I would go for a walk, or I'd be driving past a restaurant and see people smiling and laughing, and I remember thinking, how could you be doing that? I can't understand that those people are happy. That was weird.
Yeah, you couldn't even get close to it.
Couldn't get close, so I'd lost. Yeah, so that was anyway. Something was serious. Yeah, so I actually was, and then my marriage was really not good.
Yep.
And I was trying to think. I thought I was trying to do the right thing by trying to interact with my wife. And take a bit more time off work and stuff. But so what, in the end, I was thankfully self-aware enough to... sorry, mate. Just dry. So I had an old mate that used to be a pastor of a church who's also a psychologist, and he'd started a leadership development company. Organisation. He was his own consultant for that.
Yep.
And I'd used him in the school, but I also knew that I could talk frankly with him. So anyway, I went and saw him in July 2017, and I remember him being able to help me articulate that I was in a forest and starting to go deeper into that forest and that I had to turn around or I would eventually lose my mind in that forest or myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing
lose sight of the clearing as well. Yeah.
And the other thing, and so another thing that I didn't manage very well in principal leadership was being authentically me. I think I realized that within my marriage, even my Christian walk that I was trying to do and principal leadership role, I actually lost myself.
Yep.
My own.
Lost your
who
own.
am I? And
yep.
my identity and my core.
And why you did things.
And why I did things and what I stood for.
Yep. Kind of got too fragmented, too separated, perhaps.
Yeah. Like I said, I was floating around looking at my body. So I realised that I was, through talking through this stuff with Steve, that I had lost myself to myself.
Yep.
And that I was, I guess, metaphorically in the forest.
Wow.
And so immediately I went and saw my boss, who was the executive principal of the school, based in Sydney. And I just said I need to at least take a month off.
Yep.
And he was supportive of that. And that was where him and another person who knew me and my ex-wife well said, I think you need to look at your marriage too, Ben. Things aren't going very well there. Thanks for telling. Part of me was like, well, hang on. You want me to run this school the way you expect me to travel and do everything?
Yeah.
And you're telling me this?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that was partly them not wanting to admit that they could have maybe done more to look after me in the principal role.
Yep.
Because it was interesting, and whether you keep this in or not, I don't know if I care, but maybe it's okay. Because my old bosses were like, I think you're not okay because of your marriage, Ben. And then my ex-wife was like, I think you're not okay because of your job, mate.
Yeah.
So it's obviously both, But
there's interrelated.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
And you're not okay because your mum's got bloody bone cancer. Has had her jaw cut out and it's not going away. It's now growing out of her brain. So, it's like, hang on. Of course I'm not okay.
Yeah. How could who can stay okay through those all of those things happening?
So thankfully I was at least switched on enough and not lost in the forest enough to not go, okay, I'll stop here.
To not start burning the forest down or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That happens. You hear about those stories.
Exactly.
Yep.
So rather than be wheeled out, I walked out.
Yeah.
In a good way.
You. Yep.
But people weren't informed, and they didn't have to be. But
no.
It was a weird thing because I quit my job. Within 6 months, I left my marriage. Within 9 months, my mother had passed away, and I was in Brisbane during that time. So I quit my job. I left my marriage. I moved to Brisbane for an interim period during my mum dying. So I just disappeared for a lot of people.
Yep.
Yeah. But I had to.
You had to.
Yeah, there was kind of... And I didn't leave my marriage lightly. I spent 6 months... I spent 16 years working on that. 7 years with psychologists. So, it was...
You gave it a real crack.
Gave it a crack.
You did. Did your due diligence.
Yeah, so... Anyway, so, that was the beginning of, I guess, the process of not being okay.
Yep.
And then it was only in October 2019 that I was able to articulate it as burnout.
Yep.
And admit that was what had happened.
Wow.
Yeah. And as if you wouldn't well, anyway, so...
It's hard. Well, when you're in the forest, you can't tell what's going on.
No. And I'm so thankful for some of my good mates and family who were there during that time because there was a lot of things going on with grieving, loss. Yeah, a lot of loss. Anyway, so that's another story maybe for this.
But no, that's it's so incredible to go through that amount of challenge and to still, luckily you've done enough work in some ways to not, let your ego take you down in different ways or lash out too many ways. It sounds like you kind of, even though it was such an intense period, you managed to negotiate it and navigate it in the best way possible. And that's hard to do. And then I guess it brings me now to how did you then we've been going for a while, but I just want to understand how you then rebuilt. How did you then do the rebuild?
Yeah, so the rebuild came with some serious foundation removal work, I reckon. Foundation
removal work?
Yes, of who I was and who I'd become.
Yep. What do you mean by that?
So I guess when I left my marriage, I ended up moving to Brisbane for 6 months, and it was partly to, I guess there was a separation I needed to do. I grieved my kids during that time, and I would come and see them a couple of times a week.
But just grieved the change in the relation.
Change, especially for what they went through, but that also is a whole other thing.
Sure.
But yeah, so I guess spending time reevaluating and reassessing and making that time, instead of getting another job in a school. My best mate, who runs a solar company in Brisbane, employed me actually as a factory warehouse, a factory bloke person who got stuff ready and emptied bins and looked after stock.
Yep. So just less people, more just
acting.
Just doing
stuff with my hands and not with my head.
Yeah, nice. A little break from that.
Yeah, so that was the beginning, I guess, of the healing.
Yep.
Is going from a principal to stomping on the rubbish bin and pulling the bin out for the garbage truck.
How'd that for your ego go?
I loved it.
Oh, nice. Just no expectation.
Because I was like, okay, if I can go from this to this, I'm okay.
Yeah. You can fall, you can catch yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, but at the same time, I would say to people, I used to be a principal, So I still had that story, and I'm like,
of course, yep.
So it's hard, to do that. So
it was
weird
still one.
Yes, it was weird. But
especially as a male too, sometimes that can
a bit of ego.
Yeah,
for sure. So it was pretty full on. So I started. So I guess like I spent time trying to figure out all the problems with my ex-wife, which didn't really help because we've all got problems. So thankfully, I didn't spend too much time in that space.
Yep.
And then I got onto my own problems.
Yeah.
And more about. So I went to a psychologist and started working through who I'd become.
Yep.
And why.
Nice.
And I think what was good timing, as well as tragic, was that with my mum getting sick and dying, and then being left with my father and my sister, I did a lot of self-reflection on my developmental stages as a child.
Yeah. Wow.
And who I'd become during my time with my parents and sister, and how that sets you up to become the person you are. So I was able to look at that through a really unique pair of glasses because of my mum dying.
Yeah,
and seeing who I was in that dynamic, and how my mum handled death, how my dad handled death, and my sister and me
and you.
And my ex-wife, and even everyone,
just all
aunties.
Of them.
So like So that really gave me insight into the family I came from. So there was unraveling there from that experience.
You can see where you've come from to then understand why you are the way you are, why you'd made decisions, those kind of things.
Yes, so I realised I was an empathy person.
Okay, cool.
A rescuer.
Yep.
My favourite. I was obsessed with Superman.
I
probably still am, but I realised that it's not healthy to be too obsessed. But like,
you got to wear your costume, or
no,
you threw that out?
Okay. No, I threw that out last year, but no, I haven't ever worn a Superman costume. But maybe I should one day. But like his whole persona was that he was two different personalities. Who was a rescuer. Chest out, save the day when he had the suit on, but could be the bumbling sort of clueless Clark Kent during work.
Nerd. Needs help. Yep.
So I sort of realised that I actually identified with that quite strongly as a personality.
Yeah.
So yes, realising that I was a rescuer.
Yep.
Who also thought it was my responsibility to take on other people's crap or feelings or challenges, and that sometimes that most of the time you don't have to.
No.
You can look after yourself. Where I'd had a mother that modelled giving everything.
Yeah, yep.
To the people
really
in
selfless.
her life. Yeah.
Really, yep.
And so
which is a good trait, but not it can't be the whole thing,
no,
can it? Yeah.
And I think watching her get sick so young and sort of, and even to the operations that she had was to keep herself alive to be there for my dad and my sister.
Yeah, wow.
And I look back now and I think I wish that she probably didn't do the second operation and just allowed herself to have a year of quality of life.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's her decision, and I respect that she fought so hard. But yeah, so seeing that I come from a family of people who do that, who rescue and step in and look after people, that's the sort of person I'd become. But yeah, so I learnt that I was allowed to say no.
You can have some boundaries there for yourself.
I think that was a journey of boundary development that I could that I could call people out on bad behaviour in my life.
To know that you've got the strength in you to be like, no, I've got a good moral compass. I can see when someone's not acting in the right way. And the courage to then.
Especially and well, what I'd never done is actually stood up to my own father. Or people in my close family. And so I was able to learn those boundaries, and that was really empowering.
Wow.
So I felt like, even though I was this super responsible principal, that I went through this transition stage of going from that person to an adult. Finally.
Yeah, wow.
Which is a really weird thing that I could unpack a fair bit more, but because I know that I have been, I'm an adult, I've been an adult, but at the same time I would sometimes, anyway, things like managing my own finances. My ex-wife did all of that. I love it that I do that now, that I say, like I said, I say no to people that, and
it's
I
like
think
you kind of went through, like, that's almost like it was your rite of passage going through those big challenges.
Midlife crisis stuff.
Yeah. Which is sort of, that theme comes up a lot in a lot of different people's lives, doesn't it? It's like that time where you really have to take a look at everything you're doing and draw total responsibility. And
yes,
that's a challenging process to go through.
And doing that, what else was I going to say? Like so then another really important skill that I allowed myself to learn was to be kind to myself. So not only to say no to others, but when I made a mistake or let myself down or didn't meet up to my standards or someone else's, like, it's okay. You don't have to have it all together.
Nah.
You don't have to.
No.
And so I think that came with the humility of burning out. And walking away from a really high-powered or influential job, a marriage that I believed was traumatic and dying for a long time, and that that was empowering too, because so many people didn't understand, and it was none of their business anyway, most of those people. And that's the thing I learned about myself too in this whole unraveling, is that I did and still struggle with what people think about me. So I like to think that people think that I've got it all together and I'm, I don't know, whatever, good, great, stuff like that, where even I still that's still something that sits there.
It's a tough one, that one. It sticks around even when you think you've kind of got rid of it. It comes back often, doesn't it?
But it's okay not to. And actually, and that's it's another story of unraveling the family history of my grandfather being an alcoholic who killed himself, and a veteran of World War II, and so seeing what a codependency type dynamic can develop into throughout the generation of family,
into generational kind of trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, trauma, because he was not very good to my grandmother, and from stories I've heard, it was, and my family there was a time where some of my family, especially my mum, was ashamed to talk about him and that he'd taken his own life. So there was secrets and shame and let's all put on a good show and everyone will think everything's okay. So I know that I came from good stock. Not good stock, I mean from
it's funny,
that sort of style of living.
That attitude seems to be one that was around in those previous generations, and now you sort of see a shift towards, you know, things like vulnerability and authenticity and these things of being able to be okay with the different challenges that we all go through. Everyone goes through their different challenges, and it's like kind of almost decriminalizing that part of ourselves, and it is like, it is okay, like you were saying, it's okay to be kind to yourself and to know that you've made mistakes, and I've made mistakes, and that's okay. You know, that's part of our how we can slowly progress, you know, keeping those things secret and ashamed of it can be a really
well, just like
poisonous
my mum
thing.
had struggled with the shame of her father, I really struggled with the shame of marriage breakup. And it took me a long time to go, it's okay, you're stuffed up, mate. Like, it's a bad way to stuff up, because it affects your kids and other relationships and your ex-wife. But still, it's like, hang on, I still can't be the one that tries to hold this together. It's okay. So yes, it's anyway. So that and so I guess all of this, the way I see it now, is that all of this has shaped and changed and made me into the next half of my life.
Next version of your educator, next version of human.
Parent, father. Partner. Lover. Surfer, musician.
Podcast person.
Whatever. Exactly. So like it's not wasted. That's the beauty of it.
All those lessons, they're hard fought lessons, but it means that experience can go with you. And
I know that I'm really lucky and privileged because of who I am and the background I come from and the people that have helped me. So I don't take that lightly either. But I didn't do myself in.
No.
You know, in the sense of burning out or having a heart attack, because I had really high blood pressure.
Really?
From my mid-20s too.
From your mid-20s?
And that's all gone. Like
it's gone now.
And I lost, I lost 15 kilos.
Jeez.
So I was a bit overweight. Not crazy, but you still would notice.
Carrying it,
and my physiology changed. Like my body shape changed as I let go of the stress and dealt with the stuff that needed dealing with.
So I guess maybe to round this off and finish it up, like you said, you had high blood pressure back in your mid-20s, and you had that stress, back pains, different things. So there was perhaps some indicators. Maybe they were, if you look at them now as indicators. How do you think you could have, and I know this is just a hypothetical, but it's for someone, think of the audience who's at like an earlier stage in their career. What are those things that if you could listen to those couple of things back then, and then how do you think you would have been able to like manage them in a better way or a more effective way? Like, what have you learned now that can help you back then? If that makes sense.
Like,
whether it's attitudes or
if I was talking to, say, a new teacher, I would say to them, see, everyone's story and journey is different, and we all have expectations of ourselves and where we want to go. But I think I would, because the thing is, I know that I started on the journey of self-denial, and then eventually you deny so much that you don't even see what you've denied. It's gone. So I probably wouldn't have accepted the principal job. I would have stayed in the head of primary school job. But then I should have handled my marriage differently and been more honest with my ex-wife about what I wanted and how I felt. And I didn't do that. But I do that. I do try to be that person now in my new relationship.
Beautiful.
So that's good. Definitely would have spent more time delighting in my children and myself and my surfing and music. So and I think I would have appreciated people on the board of the school that I was with, not just the executive principal, really genuinely checking in with me. But then that's tough too, because I know that you have your own. I think what I learned is that only you can really truly look after you.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to.
Yep. You're allowed to.
Exactly.
Yep. I think that's important.
That's a big thing. It's like you're
allowed to look after yourself,
and
aren't
I was
you?
allowed to say no, but I never did.
Yep.
So I should have said no more.
Yep.
And then just gone. And then not like it's not my problem how that made people feel.
No.
Yeah. So that might have helped me.
I can see that. It's okay if you are struggling or you're overwhelmed or these things, and you're allowed to prioritize your own health, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. You're allowed to prioritize that.
Yeah.
Perhaps, maybe because if you're not doing that, then you can't give in those situations as wholly as perhaps.
Yeah.
You know, and that's some strong lessons there. Like, you're allowed to keep yourself in a good spot. Yeah,
that's right. That's something I want to make sure that I do for the rest of my life. And then I think when you're your best self, I don't know, you interact with people better, and you meet people.
Don't you?
Better people too. I think, like, since I've moved here, and I've made some really good friends, and it's authentic, and I play music at a pub, and I don't know, just my eyes sparkle bluer than they ever have. Nice. Apparently, people tell me that, and my kids tell me that. And I met Melissa surfing, and it's such a nice thing to. I don't know, like I remember, like this year, I keep every week. A week doesn't go by where I sort of have a self-reflection and conversation and think, I didn't know that life could be this good.
Wow.
And it's not like I don't know, I suppose I do live at a beautiful spot and surf every day, and
pretty lucky in those ways.
So I'm lucky in those ways, but it's more because of the saying no and being true to myself, being kind to myself, and setting that trajectory that has set me for this next path in journey or whatever in my life. Anyway, I don't know.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
That was really great.